The warship HumanityPrime moved quietly through the black sea of space, its engines glowing faint blue against the endless dark. Captain Vorlok stood on the command deck, his eyes fixed on the small blue planet far away on the main screen Earth. World Dekarth Dominion had marked as weak and ready to conquer. The crew spoke with confidence. The humans had no great fleets, no powerful allies, no reason to be feared, but then the transmission came. It was short, broken by static, yet every person on the deck felt the weight of the words, "Turn back, or you will never return." The voice was calm, without anger, almost polite, but it carried something strange. A cold certainty that made the skin on the back of their necks tighten. The crew laughed, at first calling it a human trick, a desperate attempt to frighten them. Yet some looked uneasy. The AI of the ship confirmed the voice was human, but could not find where the signal came from. As they moved closer to the solar system, the scanners began to pick up strange readings, signals of ships too large to be real, that appeared for a second, then vanished. Power surges in empty space. Energy signatures the AI could not match with any known technology. The science officer explained it as sensor interference, but the ship's AI hesitated and said it might be something else. Vorlok dismissed the concern. The humans would soon learn what it meant to challenge the Dominion, yet the first sign of danger came faster than expected. A massive object appeared ahead on the radar, drifting slowly toward them. When it came into view, the crew stared in silence. It was a warship, not Karth, not human. Its hull was torn open, and parts of it still burned, even in the vacuum of space. The strange thing was the damage. It was not from energy weapons or missiles. The hull had deep, jagged marks, as if something had torn it apart with claws. Vorlok ordered the wreck to be scanned. Maybe it was the work of pirates or another alien race, but when the comms officer tried to open a channel to the dead ship, a sound came through that made everyone stop. It was a whisper, the words, barely clear, but they were in Karth language, and they spoke the name of their own ship, HumanityPrime. The crew stared at each other. No one moved, no one spoke. The comms officer swore she had not sent any signal back. Vorlok ordered the AI to check for tricks or hacks, but the AI answered in a flat tone, "No source found." Moments later, the wreck drifted closer, and the scanners picked up no life signs, yet a strange energy filled the air on the bridge. Like static before a storm, some of the younger crew shifted in their seats, eyes darting to the shadows in the corners of the deck. Vorlok ordered a boarding team to prepare. They would take what they could from the wreck, salvage parts, weapons, and information before the humans could find them. As the boarding team left in a shuttle, a junior officer stepped closer to Vorlok and spoke in a low voice, "Sir, I think we should turn back." Vorlok frowned. "Are you afraid of a dead ship?" The officer did not answer. He only said this wreck was not killed in battle, it was hunted. Vorlok said nothing, his eyes locked on the drifting corpse of the ship outside. Somewhere in the dark, something was watching them. The boarding team entered the wreck through a torn section of the hull, their lights cutting through the darkness. The air inside was frozen, and silent pieces of metal floated slowly where gravity had failed. The walls were scarred and twisted, as if great force had ripped them apart. The alien crew inside were dead, their faces locked in expressions of pure fear, eyes wide open, mouths frozen in silent screams. Their weapons were still in their hands, but none had been fired, as if they never had the chance to fight. One of the soldiers from the boarding team whispered that it felt like the dead were still watching them. A strange cold settled over the group when they reached the control room, where a black cube floated in the air, its surface smooth and cold to the touch, no light reflected off it. No one knew what it was, but their science officer insisted on bringing it back to the HumanityPrime. The moment the cube crossed onto their ship, things began to change. The corridors seemed darker, footsteps echoed at night. Even when no one was there, crew members began to claim they saw strange figures walking the hall's, shapes that looked almost human, but wrong, their faces hidden in shadow. One young engineer swore he saw 3 human soldiers standing in the hangar bay, their uniforms old and burned from fire. When he called out, they turned their heads slowly toward him and then vanished. Vorlok dismissed these stories as fear and stress, but the whispers began to spread through the crew. Tension grew in tempers. Flared crew members fought violently in the mess hall, claiming the other had tried to kill them. Even though no one had done anything, the worst came. When their best pilot went missing, his quarters were empty, his uniform folded neatly on the bed, his communicator placed on top the AI. Searched every deck and found nothing, no sign of escape pods being used, no trace of movement in the airlocks. It was as if he had vanished into the air. That same hour, the black cube began to hum softly without. Being touched, the hum grew louder, and then it unlocked on its own. Projecting a dark image into the command deck, the crew watched as the blue and green Earth appeared before them, but it was not the peaceful planet they had seen before. The skies, burned with fire, giant war machines circled the planet in low orbit, and in the middle of the vision, a shadow moved slowly across the surface, something huge, something alive, and as the image faded, every light on the Zeroth Prime flickered. The AI spoke in a low, unnatural tone, saying, "Only they are coming." The bridge of the Zeroth Prime was silent. After the AI's warning, every crew member stared at the black cube still floating in the air, its surface now covered with faint glowing lines like veins of light. Vorlok ordered the science officer to scan it, but the officer shook his head. The cube was broadcasting something far beyond their technology. The glowing lines shifted and formed symbols not in Karth language, but in the tongue of the Arleth Empire, an old enemy long destroyed before anyone could speak. The cube released a burst of light and a video began to play. It was from the perspective of an alien fleet approaching Earth 100 years ago. The Arloth ships were massive, larger than anything in the Karth Navy. They moved with perfect formation, confident in their strength. Then the recording changed. The first human ships appeared small, outdated, their weapons weak compared to the Arloth's power, but they moved with speed and unpredictability the aliens had never seen. One moment they were charging directly into fire, the next they were vanishing from sensors, only to appear behind the enemy lines. Strange weapons tore through Arloth shields, weapons no one in the galaxy had ever seen. The footage showed boarding actions where humans fought with impossible ferocity. They did not retreat even when outnumbered. They did not surrender even when trapped. The AR Lath commander in the recording screamed for retreat, but it was too late. One by one their ships fell. The last scene showed a single human soldier standing on the bridge of the Arloth flagship, his armor scorched, his weapon glowing red. He spoke in perfect AR Lath language. "If you are seeing this, you are already marked." The video ended and the cube went silent. The crew of the Zeroth Prime sat frozen in place. The AI confirmed the message had been encoded to play only when a Karth warship entered Earth's system, a deliberate warning from humans long ago. Fear began to spread through the crew. Whispers of curses and ghosts filled the air. Some begged Vorlok to turn back, others prepared escape pods in secret. Vorlok's pride refused to let him retreat. He stood and declared that the Karth would not be scared by old stories. They would prove the legends false, but his voice trembled slightly when he said it. Moments later, the AI's voice returned, calm but cold. "Multiple human ships detected, but they are not here." The crew stared at the empty space around them. Nothing moved, yet the scanner showed dozens of contacts closing in. The tension on the bridge grew heavy as the crew stared at the sensor readings showing enemy contacts all around them, yet the view outside was nothing but the black emptiness of space. Vorlok ordered the scanners recalibrated, thinking it was another trick of the humans. But the results were the same. The readings were real, and moving closer. The coms officer tried to hail the unknown ships, but there was no reply, only the faint static of dead channels. Then, without warning, one of the phantom ships appeared on the main screen for a single breathless second. It was long and sleek. It's painted in dull gray with human markings on its side. But before anyone could react, it vanished, as if it had never been there. Moments later, alarms blared, a missile warning from the port side. Vorlok ordered countermeasures, but nothing launched. The system ported no missiles detected, only phantom readings. The crew looked at each other there, confusion turning to fear. The AI spoke in its calm, flat tone, "Enemy fire incoming, but no weapons have been discharged." Then the starboard side shook violently, throwing several crew to the floor. The damage report came in, but it made no sense. The hull had been struck by an energy blast, yet no ship was recorded as the source of Vorlok Ordered fighters launched, hoping to hunt the attackers, but when the hangar doors opened, the pilots found themselves looking out at the same black void. No targets. No ships, just space still. They launched and pursued the sensor blips. One squadron vanished from the radar. Entirely without distress calls, the second squadron reported. They were chasing shadows, their weapons locking on two targets that disappeared. The moment they fired, then, the fighters began returning one by one, but the pilots were wrong. Something about them was off. They spoke too slowly, their eyes distant, as if they were only half aware. One pilot was brought to the med bay for examination, and the doctor reported his brain activity was abnormal, patterns the Karth had never seen in. The corridor's crew members began to hear strange sounds, voices speaking in human tongues that no translator could fully decode. Some claimed to see human soldiers standing in empty rooms, motionless until looked at directly. When anyone blinked, the figures would be gone. Vorlok himself tried to ignore it, but one night during his rest cycle, he woke to find a human soldier standing at the foot of his bed. The soldier's armor was old, battered from battle. Vorlok blinked and the soldier was gone, but his bedsheets were damp with cold sweat. 3 days passed like this, with the HumanityPrime chasing ghosts, but making no real progress. When they finally tried to check their position, the navigation officer froze the stars. Outside had not changed. They had been traveling in circles since entering the outer range of the solar system, but no one had noticed. No matter which direction they moved, they ended up in the same place. The AI confirmed they were trapped inside a spatial anomaly of unknown origin, something humans had created to confuse and isolate intruders. Vorlok called for a full power engine burst to break free. The engines roared, but when the view screen cleared, the image of Earth filled it for the first time. The crew stared in disbelief. It looked wrong. Darker the oceans, a deeper shade of blue, the continents shadowed as if under constant storm clouds. Strange glimmers moved across its surface, like enormous machines or cities, but not the ones shown in human records. The science officer whispered that the planet might not be the Earth they knew. It could be from another time or another reality. Vorlok ignored him, focusing on the fact that they had finally arrived. He ordered the crew to prepare for orbital approach. The AI interrupted quietly, recommending immediate retreat. Vorlok demanded to know why. The AI explained in a voice softer than usual, "This is not your world to see." The crew shivered at the words. Then the AI added, "Unknown vessels are already here and watching you." Before Vorlok could respond, the lights on the bridge flickered, and the main screen filled with static. For a second, an image of a human face appeared, eyes unblinking, lips pressed into a faint smile. Then it was gone. The static cleared and Earth loomed larger in the view, but the fear that had been growing inside the HumanityPrime was now unshakable, and somewhere deep inside, Vorlok began to wonder if they had already lost before the first shot was fired. The HumanityPrime moved into high orbit above the dark Earth, the ship's engines humming softly, as if the massive vessel itself feared to make too much noise. The crew worked in silence, every eye fixed on the planet below. Strange patterns of light shifted across its shadowed surface. Some looked like cities, others like moving machines far larger than any city could hold. Then, without warning, the comes crackled. A single human voice spoke clear and sharp into the bridge. "This is Commander Elias Kane of the United Earth Fleet. You have crossed the line. We don't forgive." That the crew glanced at each other. The words were calm, but carried the same cold certainty as the first transmission. Vorlok stepped forward, introducing himself and demanding that the humans surrender their world. Kane's voice did not rise, did not threaten. It simply said, "Your choices are simple. Leave your weapons and your ship and return in the escape pods, or stay and vanish." Vorlok laughed loudly, trying to sound confident. He declared that the Karth Dominion would never bow to an enemy so small, so primitive. Kane was silent for a moment, then he said, "Primitive is a word for those you understand. You do not understand us. You cannot." Vorlok ordered all weapons armed, targeting the human ship that had appeared on the sensors. It was small, old in design, clearly outmatched by the massive HumanityPrime, and yet Kane's voice came again before Vorlok could give the order to fire. "We don't need numbers. We don't need power. We need only you to stay exactly where you are." Arsonly, the bridge shook violently, not from enemy fire but from their own weapons launching. The gunnery officer shouted in panic, that they had not fired but the ship's heavy. Cannons were releasing blast after blast, striking at other Karth ships in the fleet that comes filled with cries from Allied captains. Reporting mutiny, weapon malfunctions, and shields failing, one ship reported their own engines had overloaded and were now locked on a collision course with another. Vorlok demanded the AI stop all fire, but the AI replied, "I am not in control." The crew around him struggled to shut down systems, but the consoles flickered with strange symbols, human letters mixed with code none of them could read. On the main screen, Kane's small ship drifted. Calmly, no weapons firing, no shields raised. It simply watched as the Karth fleet tore itself apart to ships, collided in a massive explosion, scattering burning debris. Across the void, another spun out of control, venting fire and air from its shattered hull. Vorlak's second officer turned pale and whispered, "Sir, they're making us destroy ourselves." Before Vorlak could respond, the lights on the bridge flickered and went out, leaving only the glow of the main screen. Kane's face appeared once more, his eyes steady, his voice lower. "But more dangerous, you thought. Fear was a weapon we hold, but fear is only the start. We take your trust in your own systems and turn it into your end." The crew tried to lock weapons on Kane's ship again, but the targeting systems refused, showing only one locked target. Their own vessel, a warning siren, began to wail through the halls, indicating internal security lockdown. The sound of doors slamming shut echoed through the ship. Some crew were trapped in corridors, banging on sealed hatches. Others screamed that they could hear boots marching outside their compartments, even though there were no boarding parties detected. The medbay reported that one of the pilots, who had returned earlier, was gone from his bed without using the doors. The cameras showed him simply vanishing into the dark corner of the room. Vorlak's pride began to crack. He demanded Kane tell him why the galaxy feared Earth. Kane leaned forward, slightly, his voice calm. "Because you think war is about who has the biggest gun. It's not. War is about who will stop at nothing. Till the enemy no longer exists, we are that enemy." The human ship vanished from the sensors, yet Kane's voice still came through. "This is your last chance. Surrender your ship or be erased." Vorlak hesitated for the first time, his hands tightening on the rail before him. Then with a growl, he refused. The moment he spoke, the HumanityPrime's weapons locked on another Karth cruiser and fired without command. The blast ripped through the cruiser's fuel cells, setting it ablaze. Kane's voice did not return, and the only sound on the bridge was the slow breaking of the fleet outside, one ship at a time, until the blackness of space was filled with drifting wrecks and glowing debris, and Vorlak began to understand they were never in control. From the moment they entered human space, the battlefield was silent, except for the faint groans of metal as the wrecks of the Karth fleet drifted through the darkness. Fires burned in the void, glowing like dying stars. Against the endless black, the once proud armada of the Dominion now floated in pieces. Engines, cold weapons, shattered bodies of Karth soldiers drifting lifeless through space. The HumanityPrime was the last ship still, holding together, but even it was bleeding power. The lights on the bridge flickered dimly, and the smell of burned circuits hung in the air. Vorlak stood at the command rail, his hands gripping it so tightly his claws dug into the metal. Could not believe what he was seeing. There had been no grand battle, no exchange of massive fleets, no brilliant maneuvers. The humans had not fought them head-on. They had simply taken control, turned their own strength against them, and waited for the inevitable collapse. The crew moved quietly around him, many with faces pale and eyes wide. Some were whispering prayers to gods they had long abandoned. Others stared blankly as if their minds had broken from what they had witnessed. Vorlak's second officer approached, speaking in a low voice, as if afraid the humans might still hear every word. "We cannot fight them, sir. We must retreat." Vorlak opened his mouth to argue, but the truth sat heavy in his chest. They had already lost. The only question was whether they would survive to tell the story. Then the comms came alive again, the same calm human voice from the first warning. "Turn back or you will never return." Vorlak froze. Every crew member looked up at the speakers. The voice was not Kane this time. It was older, slower, filled with something deeper than threat. It was certainty. "Now, you understand. It is not our weapons. You should fear it as us." The main screen flickered, and for a moment, Vorlak saw the source, a single human ship drifting just beyond the wreckage, Its design was unlike anything in Karth records. No visible weapons, no shields active, only the strange white markings along its hull. The image zoomed closer, and Vorlok could see human figures standing in perfect silence on the outer hull of the ship, as if the vacuum meant nothing. Their eyes fixed on the Zereth Prime. Even across the distance, he felt their gaze like knives against his mind. The AI reported that the human ship had disabled every weapon and engine system on the Zereth Prime. Without touching the hull, the crew's consoles went black. One by one, the lights dimmed further until the bridge was lit only by the ghostly glow from the main screen. Vorlok felt his chest tighten, not from injury, but from the heavy weight of knowing they were being allowed to live only because the humans wanted them. Kane's voice returned, softer now, but still carrying that strange, unshakable strength. Take your ship and leave. Tell your Dominion what you have seen. Tell them why no one comes here twice. There was no mockery in his tone, no pride, only the quiet truth of someone who knew the outcome before the fight even began. Vorlok gave the order to retreat. The navigation controls came back online, but they were locked to a single course away from Earth. As the engines roared to life, the human ship remained motionless, watching until the stars shifted and the planet was gone from view. No pursuit, no last shot, just silence. Hours passed before anyone spoke on the bridge. The crew seemed afraid to break the quiet. When the first voice finally came, it was the comms officer, asking if they should send a report. Vorlok shook his head slowly. We will not send it over the air, he said. This must be told in person. The words of a survivor carry more weight than the voice of the dead. When they finally reached Dominion space, the Zereth Prime was met by repair crews and curious officers, eager to hear of their victory, but the look on Vorlok's face silenced them. He ordered everyone off the bridge and into the War Council chamber where the highest commanders waited. Then, standing before them all, he spoke slowly and clearly. Never go to Earth, not with fleets, not with armies, not with hope. There are many worlds we can conquer, but Earth is not one of them. If you try, you will not find a war, you will find an ending. One in the chamber laughed at the warning. No one accused him of cowardice. Something in his voice and in the haunted eyes of the surviving crew told them this was not a story of defeat in battle. It was a story of something far worse. The message spread quickly through the Dominion and into the wider galaxy, carried by traitors, spies, and deserters, till every race knew the truth, and so Earth remained quiet. In the records of galactic war, no one dared to test its strength again. Yet in the deep black between the stars, human ships still moved unseen, watching, waiting, and remembering those who had ignored the warning.